Hey everybody, Rob here. It's time for a bunch of stories from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. First one, making my landlord pay over $100K for fixing a sink. Let's jump right in. Thanks for subscribing, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. So, I'm a college student and I rent a room from a landlord and live in a house with multiple other students. The contract for my room clearly says that I have to fix all the damages to my room that I have caused at my own cost, and that all the bigger issues in the house will be covered by the landlord. Well, one day I noticed that my sink is kind of clogged and it's making a weird noise. He says it's probably my own fault and that I should get a plunger to fix the problem. A little background info about the house that I live in. All the sinks at the top level of the house connect to the same pipe, and everyone heard the same noise, so the chance of it being my fault would be almost zero. But since I had to fix the problem on my own, I tried my best. However, you might have guessed it, but I'm not really good at this since it's not my job. I even had my dad check it since he knows more about this stuff than I do, and he says the pipe is clogged somewhere but doesn't know exactly how far down the pipe. So I tried my best to fix the problem myself, but since it's clearly a bigger issue that is not my fault, I contact my landlord once again. He still refuses to come and fix the clogged sink, even after me clearly stating that everyone is hearing this noise in the house, and tells me to solve my own problems like an adult would. Well, since I'm legally not an adult yet, and having tried my best, me and the other residents in the house had decided to give up trying to fix the issue and just let it be. A month later, one person in the house had water coming out of her sink because it completely clogged, and within days, everyone was having the same issue. Because now everyone was complaining to the landlord, he had to fix the problem, since it was a bigger problem within the house that everyone was experiencing. Not only did he have to fix the clogged pipe of all the sinks, but he also had to fix the water damage that we all had in our rooms because the water would just come out of the sink. When he finally decided to hire someone to fix the problem, the costs were already up to $100,000 and probably will be even more since some of the other people living within the house have sued the landlord for not agreeing to the contract and for neglect of his basic duties as a landlord. He even called us and screamed at us why we didn't mention the problem earlier, to which I replied that I tried to solve the problem as an adult by informing my landlord who was supposed to fix it, but that this clearly didn't help. Quick message to OP, when you contact your landlord, always follow it up with an email. You need to have a written trail of some sort so that you can go back on it and say, I did my due diligence. On to our next story. How I got the final laugh at a slumlord. Let's jump right in. Years ago, college days, I had a slumlord. For example, he was an unapologetic ass, barged into girls' apartments to show new potential tenants unannounced. Even when the girl was naked in bed, he still wouldn't leave, but continue to show the apartment. In our state, they are required to give 24 hours notice before entering. In my apartment, I complained about a leaky sink in February, 40 gallons a day when I measured it, and it took him until November when I found a sink, new in box, at my back door. I called him about it, and he said he thought I'd get the hint and install a new sink myself. The firebox to control the alarms was outside my door, and it was faulty and would go off 3 times a day or night, and I would have to dash to the box to reset the alarm. Kept calling him about it, and he didn't care. Keep resetting it, he'd say. Cue malicious compliance number 1. I started calling the fire department every time it went off instead of resetting it. The fire department would have to come down to investigate, reset the alarm, and leave. After the 3rd call or event, they started fining him. I think it was like $1,000 for each event. The fire alarm was fixed within a day after that. When I moved out, I mailed the key back to him too late. He received the key on the 4th, when technically he should have had it on the 1st. Mind you, I was vacated and moved out by the 1st, but the mailed key didn't arrive to him by then. I had even cleaned the entire apartment spotless, better than it was when I moved in, to ensure that he wasn't going to give some BS reason to keep my deposit. So he took me to court for $3,000, 3 months worth of rent, because he didn't get his key back by the 1st. I told the judge the story, but he said other things didn't matter. Technically, I should have gotten the key to him by the 1st. He asked the landlord, "When did you rent the apartment?" And he replied, "Within 2 to 3 weeks it was rented." So the judge ruled that 3 months rent was ludicrous and the apartment was rented within a month. But since the technicality said he didn't have the key on the 1st, I would owe him 1 month's rent. Cue malicious compliance number 2. Your Honor, I am but a lowly college student with very little income. Can I make payments in the amount of $50 a month until the debt is repaid? And like that, it took this guy 20 months to get his damn $1,000. And I wrote one letter in each of the checks memo, FUCKYOU, repeatedly. I don't know, OP, I think you still lost being out $1,000, but let's ask the audience. Guys, what do you think? In the comments down below, did OP lose or did he come out on top? On to our next story. Bank selectively enforces rules, loses business and money. Let's jump right in. So this is my dad's story rather than mine, but I felt it might amuse some and is probably the only time in his nearly 70 years that he has done something like this. In the 1970s, with the UK suffering a recession and work hard to come by, my then childless dad had an opportunity to move to Dubai to work. My mom was able to go with him. They'd have accommodation provided, a good income, higher than the UK equivalent would have been, and were able to fly over and check everything out before committing. All in all, a great opportunity. They took the plunge and decided, as they had no accommodation costs in Dubai, they would keep paying the mortgage on their UK house, so it would be available to them if and when they returned. My parents had a UK current account with one bank, let's call them Goodish, but their mortgage and savings account with a different bank, let's call them Muppets. Every month, Dad's salary was paid into his current account with Goodish, and he'd then phone them to ask them to move money into his savings account with Muppets, as this is the account his mortgage payment came from. He never had any problems. One day, Mom writes a check from the Goodish account, then later realizes the account will not have sufficient funds to cover it. No problem, thought Dad. I'll give Muppets a call and ask them to move some back out of the savings. Unfortunately, Muppets didn't want to transfer money out of their account, and so informed Dad that the only way he can remove money from that account is in branch, in person, using his savings book. Now, Muppets didn't have a Dubai branch in the 70s. The only way he could comply would be to travel 3,500 miles home. Frustrated at their repeated refusal to help, Dad resolves the immediate check issue another way and looks at when he'll next be in the UK. Fast forward a couple of months and Dad is back in the UK. Armed with his little savings book, he strolls into his local branch of Muppets and asks for confirmation of his savings balance and mortgage balance. He then hands over the mandatory savings book and requests to withdraw the full savings account balance in cash. Dad then pays off the outstanding mortgage in full and asks for an envelope for the excess. Dad then closes the savings account, walks to Goodish, and deposits the remaining savings. Bank manager tries to stop this happening, but once Dad pointed out that he technically isn't able to transfer money into his savings account without using the savings book, he'd have no way to pay the mortgage. The mortgage itself had no restriction on early payment, and thus he could do what he liked with his own money. It sounds to me like that bank lost thousands in interest payments, and deservedly so. On to our next story. Do not make any contact with anyone from work. Let's jump right in. Once upon a time, I was working with a major Australian telecommunications company. I worked in a call center with a group of underemployed lateral thinkers. It made work great as you were always discovering new things, but it made us a bit of a challenge to manage as the department tried to hobble us to fit into the cookie cutter molds they expected of call center operators. We had a manager who was, if I was to be generous, useless. He once went on leave for 2 weeks without a replacement being arranged. I put a balloon with a face drawn on it at his desk as our interim team leader. Team productivity under Mr. Balloon was measurably better than when the team leader was there, and I proved it with reports and all. Suffice it to say, our manager did not command respect. Fast forward a few months, and one of my colleagues figured out how to spoof emails. Our manager had a certificate he proudly presented on his desk, saying he had graduated something college, having completed a course in frontline management. He was extremely proud of this, and so the target vector was clear. My colleague went to an internet cafe back when they were a thing and sent a spoofed email to our manager. The email was built to look like it was from something college. The email demanded that manager provide evidence of his competence as a frontline manager, or his certificate would be withdrawn. Now, manager's world was appropriately shaken when he got this email. He must have complained to the appropriate higher-ups because the InfoSec squad jumped straight onto it. They traced the email back to the cafe's IP address. Okay, in retrospect, we could all see this error in judgment. They printed out mugshots from the company's internal directory and identified my colleague as being the person who sent the email. Colleague was pulled into a day's worth of meetings as manager, manager's manager, etc., all lent on him pretty hard trying to get him to confess so they could dismiss him for misconduct. I think the company realized they were on shaky ground to try and prove that colleague had really done anything wrong. Oh, the days before bullying was codified. Having sweated colleague all day with no effect, manager's manager put him on paid leave pending investigation with strict instructions: do not make any contact with anyone from work, as they didn't want rumors of a pleb messing with the ruling class getting out. Months pass. Colleague has not been in the office. The company has completed their investigation, but need to let colleague present his defense. But his mobile is disconnected, and he has connected a new number with a competitor, and he has moved home, and he is not replying to emails. He has ghosted, and the company doesn't know what to do. More months pass. I guess it gets to a point where the company can declare colleague legally dead, or at least say he has abandoned employment. They stop paying his wages. A few months pass. Manager's manager is walking through a business district in the city and runs into colleague. Colleague is in a flash suit with a briefcase, obviously hustling to a meeting himself. Manager's manager says, "Hello," asks colleague what he's been doing with himself. "I work for major tech company now. I've been working with them since couple of weeks after he was put on paid leave. I would have told you, but I was told not to communicate with anyone from work. Thanks for that second paycheck though." One of the best instances of malicious compliance I have witnessed, and probably the most profitable. I don't really think that was fair to the old manager. I mean, Mr. Balloon was a straight shooter with upper management written all over him. Maybe you could say he was full of hot air, but he seemed like someone with such a buoyant personality. On to our next story. You think I'm trying to steal your money? Have it your way then. Let's jump right in. Some background: I'm a commercial and industrial HVAC technician. We specialize in large AC and refrigeration systems, mostly involving chillers. It's first thing on a Monday morning when I get a customer's call in about one of their chillers being down. Cool beans, I don't have much on my schedule for today and haven't even left the house yet. This sounds like a great place to start off the week. I get there and find all kinds of problems with this chiller. We're talking at least a week worth of repairs, assuming all the parts come in the next morning. For some context, this machine is absolutely ancient. By this point, I'd lost count of how many times we'd tried to sell them a new one. Regardless, I make some phone calls so I can work up a price on the repairs and see how soon I can get the parts. A few minutes in, and I find out the manufacturer no longer supports this model. No big deal. I explain to the customer that we can either replace it or retrofit it. In my opinion, retrofitting a machine this old is a waste of time and money, but we have to give them the option. It pays just fine either way. After a 30-minute conversation with the customer and several lengthy phone calls, the customer decides it's finally time to replace the chiller. I tell him he'll get a quote in the next few days and talk to our sales team, who sends it their way. Within minutes of receiving the proposal, the customer is blowing my phone up about how the price is too high and we're trying to steal their money. I'm driving so I can't talk, but have my phone mounted where I can see any calls and/or texts I receive. After about 15 minutes, I pull onto the shoulder and give him a call back. He's still pissed and starts yelling about how we added extra stuff to the quote just to take their money. Here's the thing, this new chiller uses a different style compressor than the old one. These new compressors are really loud. Normally this doesn't matter, but this chiller sits less than 100 feet from a large neighborhood and a daycare. The unnecessary extras he's complaining about are the sound dampening options for the chiller. Are they expensive? Sure. At the end of the day though, it doesn't really matter, they're going to need them. I tried multiple times to explain this, but he refused to listen and informed me that our conversation was over. Give me what I want or I'll find a company that will. You know what? Sure thing, boss. I inform our sales office who had me hand deliver the new proposal along with a document explaining the issues with what he's asking for. I had him sign it and left him a copy. 3 months and a few $100,000 later, and guess who can't run their brand new chiller? Why, might you ask? It violates the city noise ordinance. Anytime it starts up, they get fined. Need to fire it up to do maintenance? Fined. Need to fire it up because the other chillers are down? Fined. Control system hiccups and accidentally starts it up? Fined. Their brand new chiller is nothing more than a big expensive paperweight. Even better though is that we're currently installing all the sound dampening equipment we originally quoted. However, as we're having to change everything out in the field instead of it being installed at the factory, it's going to cost almost 3 times as much as it would have in the first place. But hey, maybe they'll listen next time. Well, OP, it sounds like the customer paid a hefty idiot tax, but it's okay, they're probably used to paying this tax. Have we not learned yet not to piss off the people who can do jobs that you can't do? I mean, come on. I'd like to thank all 5 OPs for posting their stories to the Malicious Compliance subreddit. You can visit them at the links in the description below. Please go there and give them all an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends. And we'll see you in the next one.